Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sophisticated Ignorance. I am Nieema Simone.
Oh, and I'm Steven, and that's Vixon that we was yelling at.
Good and afternoon, everyone, or whenever you're listening to this. What's going on? Happy New Year, first and foremost. Let's not be rude to our audience.
Happy New Year, guys.
Isn't there like a cutoff though on when you say?
No,
Happy
you have
New
to
Year?
say it for at least
a week, a full week, right?
No, I was gonna say first 4 months. Duh.
Bro.
Because I work in customer service, so after like the second, I was done with telling people
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
I give it a good week because I don't see people.
Word, you gotta say it to everybody you see for the first time for the year.
I give it a week.
And that's usually 4 months.
That's a dub.
No, just single digit numbers.
Yeah.
Once it hits like the 10th, you can't do it anymore.
Say no more.
Oh, you mean the 10th month or the 10th day?
Shut
day.
up.
All right, moving on. We have a guest.
Well.
We have a guest. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Hailey Nolasco. I'm the CEO and founder of Civically Engaged Incorporated.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
We're gonna have a very civil conversation. So please, ladies and gents, look alive.
And he looked at me when he said that.
Mad subs. I really don't know why she agreed to come on here. Clearly, she never listened to the show.
I got swindled.
Oh, Brooklyn just keep on scamming. So tell the people a little bit about yourself.
Oh, where should I start? Okay, so
Start from the beginning. So you were a fetus,
on
right?
July 19th, 1988. It was a Tuesday. I hear it was raining. The angels were, tearing. Happiness in their eyes. But no. So long story short, again, my name is Hailey Nolasco. I'm a Brooklyn girl, born and raised all my life. Dominican descent. I'm a first generation Dominican. My parents were immigrants to this country, and for a long time, I've always just been not only about like a history junkie and kind of a nerd, but have always been really interested in how to give back to community and knowing about self and how to keep that, and push it forward. So some each one teach one sort of situation. Prior to this, I've been working on public safety for some time. It's something that's very close to my heart, very near and dear to me. Yeah. But ask away. I have a whole bunch. I could start anywhere. So that's how I could say a bunch of stuff.
So okay, you say you always wanted to give back into your community and things of that nature. Was there anything that specifically happened in your life that made you want to do that? Because that's not typically something that you see from a majority of people, especially in our age group.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. So I'd say so. Okay, I'll go back to the fetus time. So I don't want to say I don't want to say the stereotypical story. I was raised by a single mother, but for some time my parents they divorced when I was 2, and that affected me deeply for some time. Growing up, I have a stepfather, but he's an amazing individual. Played a good role of being my father. But it's still not always the same. You still don't have your father figure in your life, and then you see your siblings growing up with their father, and you kind of always wish that you had that in your life as well. So for a long time, I felt really misunderstood in life. I felt like nobody really understood me. And my mother, she remarried, I want to say probably when I was around 8 years old, but she was working, she's a hairdresser. My father's a bodega owner, so super Dominican. My mother's a hairdresser, my father's a bodega.
So on brand. On brand.
On brand.
With the cat on the bread.
Right? Yes, there is a cat. There's always a bodega cat.
You live there.
It's a staple.
It's a staple. You're not a bodega if
He's
you don't have a bodega
technically an
cat.
employee. He might claim him on his taxes.
He might.
I ain't mad at him.
But let's see, where was I going with this? Oh yeah, so my mother was, she was working at a hair salon. So my grandmother and my grandfather, they were taking care of me throughout the day while my mother worked a lot of hours. So they were my caregivers. I loved them to death. They lived in Marlboro projects, Marlboro houses. Shout out to Marlboro.
Gang.
I lived there with my grandparents for some time as well. I was going back and forth with my mother living in Bensonhurst. And I want to say when I was around, I'm forgetting the age, but I was probably around 11, my grandmother had died from a heart attack very suddenly on vacation. And that kind of I spiraled out of control after that, because that was the person I was so used to always seeing, and I loved it very much. And then my grandfather had passed away 2 to 3 years after that from colon cancer. So it was a very traumatizing moment in my life, and now that I do the work, I understand the impact of adverse childhood experiences on a young person. And I say, again, with the traditional and stereotypical story, I met a boy, he wasn't on the right path in life, you might want to say, whatever that means. He was gang involved. And through that, I also became gang involved as well, because through that, I found like a family. You're gonna fill the void for me. So oftentimes when I work with youth, I always tell people, they're like, how do you reach young people, especially young people that are in gangs, cliques, crews, whatever it is. I'm like, well, the first thing you need to say is don't tell them to leave their gang, because they're gonna shut down on you immediately, because you don't know what that gang might mean to them. Not saying that you're promoting adverse behavior, but you don't know what that means to them. You don't know if it's safe for them to leave. You don't know if that's a way of them getting by economically. And again, you don't know if that's their family, that's something that's filling a void for them. So that's never the tactic to go. So for a long time, I was fighting a lot. And I always felt like I had to wear a mask, in a sense. So I became gang involved when I was 13. And, it's not like, and I never want to be like, I was running hoods out here. Like, it wasn't like that. Like, so I'm not going to,
You wasn't Griselda.
Yeah, I wasn't Griselda. I was not Griselda.
Understood.
But I had my own experiences, having been gang involved and, fighting every single day. And also going to a high school that was, shout out to Sheepshead, also going to a high school that was predominantly not made up of the gang that I was in. So you can imagine I had a very hard time, especially being...
Head on a swivel at all times.
Right.
Yeah, you have to be very... Yeah, trust issues, not, and even today, to this day, I'm 30 now, but I still look over my, I'll be in a very comfortable situation, but I'll catch myself like looking around if I'm around too many people, and it's like, it's a form of PTSD, and oftentimes we associate PTSD with like veterans or, but we don't understand that even on the 4th of July, if you're hearing firecrackers and you're like, is that gunshots or a fight? That's a form of PTSD.
Yeah.
It is. If you hear a tire pop, just like, was that a gunshot or was that a tire? But the fact that we're even thinking that way is a form of PTSD. People in other neighborhoods don't necessarily think like that. So even now to this day, I'm so far removed from that, but it's still something that I experience on an everyday basis. So it wasn't, so fast forward, so again, having to pretend, that I was angry on days that I wasn't angry, so that people would obviously not want to take advantage of me, and also playing that role as a young woman as well. So that's already a weird place to navigate, and I was probably like 30 pounds lighter. In the same height, but like 30 pounds lighter, and fighting a lot. And grades were slipping, obviously. Like, nobody thought I was going to graduate on time. My family wanted to considering putting me in like a mental institution at a time. So it's just a really hard, trying time for me. And then there was this one day in particular that always stands out, where the person that I was with at the time, my boyfriend at the time, I think his brother had robbed someone the day before. And the person saw me and my boyfriend at the time together, and he wanted to retaliate against us, although we didn't have anything to do with it, but he wanted to retaliate against us. And it was on Kings Highway. I'll never forget that day. Gosh. And all I saw by the 82 stop, I'll never forget that day. And right in front of Rainbows. I'm like, I'm walking down, all of a sudden, you would see like people, like the force multiplied. Like, there's so many people, and it's just like you hear everybody doing their call and stuff. And all of a sudden, like, there's a difference between being a coward, and obviously I'm using euphemisms, but it's like there's a difference between being a coward and being stupid, right? And it's like, I'm not fighting 30 people. Like, I don't care who you are, you ain't got no superpowers to fight 30 people off.
Word. You're not Black Panther.
No, it's not happening. Like,
you're not sure.
Never. Sometimes I'm like, not Marvel movies, but like, those other movies where like things are happening. I kind of get upset sometimes. I can't do like Wanted. That's always I always wanted to do that like that. I'll get on topic, but I always wanted to.
What is going on?
You want a curved bullet?
Yeah, like, it was like always so cool. Not to say the curved bullets, but I always thought that was cool. Like, she picked him up in the car and he just like. It was
a dope movie.
But
you got it.
Off on the tangent.
We get it.
But going on. So we're running and getting on the bus to go for our safety because it was just 3 of us. And the person just picked up a brick and threw it, and he threw it at my head. And if it wasn't that the person moved me out of the way, like, maybe I wouldn't be here speaking to you all right now. Maybe I was a vegetable. Who knows what I would look like at this moment if I'd be here. And it skinned me, and I just, like, felt it, like, just bypass my head like that. And ever since that day, I was just like, this is not for me. This is not what I want to do. And it's never been me. Like, I'm a Spice Girls fan. I've been Posh Spice for years, so it's just like, and I always say that's a joke where but I just always say that just to like put things into perspective, where it's just sometimes you pretend, and I don't say pretend, but you're moving as if you're something because you're masking other pains that you're feeling and other traumas that you've had in your life, and you feel like, for a long time, I didn't know how to deal with a lot of emotion, and we all know that anger is a secondary emotion. It's not a primary emotion. So it's taken me a very long time to even know how to, just talk about how I'm feeling. Yeah, because usually it's just like, you piss me off, put hands and feet on you, right? It's just like, that's what you do. It's not, like, but at that time, like, my mindset, because that's what was the norm for me. It was just like, you don't like something, it's, you answer it with violence. And even that's why I always talk about when I have kids, like, I would never want to put hands on my child, only because it's that it's a learned behavior. So now you're understanding that, okay, if I don't like something, I can put hands on you. I can hurt you physically. And that takes away from how you just deal with conflict. So it's not healthy. It's not healthy behavior. So needless to say, the next day in school didn't go too well because a young man went to my school. But it was just a really hard time for me, and I was lucky to be able to get out of the situation that I was in because I had a very strong support system at the time. So a lot of people was like, "How did you get out?" or "How did this happen?" And I always just say, I just got very lucky at that time. And just had people that were in my corner just to help make that transition easier for me, and definitely changing the norms around me as well. So it's just like, how are you going to change if you're just still in the same place all the time, doing the same behaviors, practicing the same mindset? And then for some time, like, I was really embarrassed. Well, one, I took myself out of that because I don't want to be in a situation where I'm going to get hurt or harmed if somebody sees me. But I also just removed myself. So when again, like, nobody thought I was ever going to graduate high school or anything, and I bust my behind from, like, to have a 55 average for, like, almost 2 years and then still graduate with just under 80 average in high school. It's really hard because, so you had to, like, knock out, like, 90s, like, A's, like, for the rest of your time there, go to night school, and I did everything that I had to do, to the point where when I was, like, graduation, one of my math teachers, Miss Novotny, I'll never forget his name, he looked at me like, "What are you doing here?" When I was graduating, I graduated on time. I still went and got my bachelor's. I got my master's degree, and I'm applying for the doctorate program right now. So it's just like, no one ever thought that I would be able to be in the spaces that I'm in right now. And I would have never thought that I'd be in the spaces that I'm in right now. So I just use that to just want to give back and just really be intentional about the work that I do. So for a very long time, I just, like, put that to the side. I would never lead with that. Like, oh, I was getting involved. Like, I never really it came from a place of embarrassment. And I got really lucky. After high school, I had an internship. I was part of, like, this inner city youth internship program. It was called the All Stars Project. And every week I got accepted into the program, and every week we would go to professional development workshops at, like, the largest firms in New York City. And at the end of the program, we would get a paid internship for the summertime. I got really lucky because they kept me on board. They liked my work, and I was probably cheaper to have on board than, like, somebody else at a full salary. So it worked out for me. So for about 5 years, I worked at that law firm, and that also helped me to mature as well. And then after that, I worked at another large law firm, and then after that, I worked for public television. I worked for WNET for some time, which is PBS Channel 13's parent company in New York City.
My cousin used to work for TBS.
Yeah, and it was a cool experience, but I always felt like it wasn't my calling. I just always felt like there was something, and to be frank, like, I didn't want to be anybody's paper pusher. Like, I'm not here to answer your phone. I'm not here to schedule your meetings. Like, I just felt like I was here for a greater purpose. And then also there was so many microaggressions that I would experience on an everyday basis, just being a woman of color in these spaces. And a lot of times, like, but I didn't know what to call it then. Because, like, I didn't know what to call it. But now, because of the work that I do, now I can see it and call it for what it is. But then I just felt like I'd be embarrassed and stuff. Like, I remember one day, I'll never forget, I always talk about this. One day, I have a peach tree in my backyard.
Dope.
And pretty dope. They actually just cut it down.
Peaches here?
I don't think it's peach season, though. I don't know when that is, though, so I'd probably be lying. But
I tried.
Yeah, next time when I do get peaches, I'll be like, "Hey guys, remember the peaches?"
We'll have you back.
But one day in the office, because, you know, you always want to be down, you want to be cool with your coworkers and stuff, so whatever. And I was like, "Oh guys, you know, I have a peach tree. I'll bring some peaches, you know, tomorrow." And they were like, "You have a peach tree in Brooklyn?" And I was just like, what? And it's something so small, but then at the same time it affected me. And then also being somebody that graduated from CUNY at that time once, but now I'm a 2-time CUNY graduate. Like, being in space, and it's just like, oh, you know, we're a nonprofit organization, and nothing, and, you know, they were great people, but it's also, like, implicit biases that people have. So you could be a well-meaning person, just being frank again, you could be a well-meaning white person, quote unquote, but then also you have to be very understanding of the privilege that you hold, and also your implicit biases. And I think that's something that wasn't available at that time. I guess I don't know what's going on now at this point, but it's like, we're a nonprofit organization. We should have some, you know, young lawyers come from, you know, CUNY Law. And the person in the room was just like, what? He was like, yeah, I'd prefer somebody come from a real school. And then
I've heard that about, like, how they view CUNY in general.
Yeah,
like,
because it's a public institution. Yeah, you don't have education, but it's also like, and not to talk down about anybody that's ever been to Ivy League institution or a private institution, like, that's great, big up to you that you were able to do that. But oftentimes in a CUNY institution, you do get a very good education. And on top of that, so many of these students are juggling life. Like, just life in general. So it's just like, I got my master's degree working 3 jobs. So it's just like, it's very difficult to manage that. So I would prefer to hire the student that was able to get 3 jobs and still get her master's degree and get honors, than somebody that just like, oh, you know, like you had a more privileged life maybe, you know, you might have had a more privileged life, maybe you didn't have to work.
Their dad is a judge or some shit.
Yeah, like and that's not everybody's situation, but it's a lot of people's situation. But that person would, you know, maybe graduate just because they have a certain school on their resume, they might be called before like somebody like myself.
And then a lot of these professors don't only work in CUNY schools either. Like they could be working at private schools also.
Yeah, so you could have a professor
literally getting the same education.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, you can have somebody that works at Columbia one day, and then they'll be at Brooklyn College or, you know, John Jay another day. And, you know, people that have actually had lived experiences and have done the work. So that's really hurt my feelings. Like, just say, like, that really hurt my feelings there. So I read this book. The Alchemist is my favorite book. I don't know if y'all read it, but it's the best book. I love that book.
All right, book gang.
I love that book. That book, anytime somebody asks us, like, do you ever have a book that, like, changed your life? The Alchemist is always that book for me. Like, if you look at mine, it has, like, little pink, like, little notebook pads in it, sticky notes, highlighted everywhere.
Not to cut you up, but if you guys remember at my party, I had custom-made cupcakes, and each cupcake had a quote from The Alchemist.
Oh, yeah. You
that's dope.
Yeah.
You said on the show that was your favorite book.
We ate that now that night. It was delicious.
Oh,
I still have the cake I didn't cut.
Facts.
Oh.
What?
I can't eat
It's
cake.
in the freezer? It's in the freezer?
Yeah.
Okay,
Save it.
fine.
Yeah,
I think
it's frozen.
I think it's good for like
that shit was months ago.
It's frozen in time.
As long as it's frozen, like people get
Frozen
married
in
and
time.
their cake a year
What?
later
That's like a wedding
to celebrate
cake.
their anniversary.
Sis,
Yeah.
let it go. It's over.
Well, I'm saying, like, I understand you could have it for at least a year. But
Is that medically
it's true
proven?
well, think about it. Frozen food. I mean, that in a different episode, guys.
Yeah.
But it's like the frozen food. Like,
No, we'll have you back.
Word.
So cut the cake with
I really
me.
want my peaches now.
Or peaches and frozen cake. That's the next
There we
episode.
go.
Vixon eats it first.
And I think that's really dope, though. Like, even thinking about that, putting quotes on. It's such an amazing book. And it's really that book that really put things into perspective for me. And just really thinking about is whatever it is that you want, if you really want something bad enough, the universe will conspire to get that for you. And I quit my job. I quit my job. And I just really started thinking about what is it that I want to do? Like, what is my calling? And something told me, like, well, you know, you've kind of been embarrassed about, you know, all the stuff that you went to as a young person, and maybe the way that you can, you know, find your purpose is to revisit that and take away the shame and just, like, living your truth. And I saw, like, that same day I was, like, well, not the same day, but, like, kind of around that time, I saw, like, this posting for an internship at the Brooklyn DA's office, and I applied for it. And I was so mad at first because when they just give you an assignment when you get there. And I got this assignment at the Supreme Court, and it was really just like looking at files and filing them away. I started crying so much at first. I'm like, oh my God, what? I just quit a good paying job with some benefits at a TV company to just like file paperwork. And I'm like, I'm not learning anything. Like, but I was just like, wow, this is terrible. But I guess I'm like 8 weeks and I'll figure it out. Whatever I need to figure it out, I'll figure it out. But within like the next day, I got called into the office. And the lady that was my supervisor, she called me into the office, and I really wish I remembered her name right now, because I think what she did was just so dope, because it's just about, like, this is really how we should move in life, like, empowering other people, like, seeing the talents that people have, and just, like, being honest, like, you should not be here, like, let me put you in positions to do something. And she was like, I'm sorry, but I looked at your resume, and you shouldn't be here just filing paperwork. She's like, I'm just gonna look around and see what division might have some space for you and take you on, but just, like, hold tight, just keep coming for now. And by the end of the week, I was in a whole other division. And I was in Comler. At the time, it was called Comler. Now it's the Kings County Reentry Task Force and Comler, so it's a mix of both. And people coming home from prison, within like 72 hours, they'd come there and get like their entitlements, so Medicaid, whatever they need, and get case management. And I was so happy to be in that space. I was like, oh my God, this is gonna be great. And I know it sounds crazy, like it's like, what, you're excited? But like I was really excited to just be in a space to learn. And when I got there, they never treated me like an intern. Like, I was legit a worker there. Like, I had a caseload, I was doing, you know, a whole bunch of stuff, and I was running workshops, groups with people that were just coming home from doing 20 years plus. I was working with sex offenders. I was doing the whole shebang. And I remember, like, in my second week, I forget how old I was at the time. Maybe I was 24 or something. And, was I 24? 24 or 25. This guy comes in, and he just came home from doing like 24 or 25 years in prison. And all I could think about was like, I'm looking at him, and I was just so humbled by him. And I was just like, every experience that I've ever had, you were in jail for. That's all I kept thinking. And I'm like, there are so many people that are sitting in prison, like to this day, from the day you were born to right now, there's been somebody in jail, there's been somebody in prison. So think about that. Every heartbreak you've had, every happy day, every vacation, every moment that you've ever experienced, there's been somebody behind bars about that. And I was just, and ever since that day, it just like put it into perspective for me. And I was just like, this is the work that I want to do. And then when I started working, like there was a sex offender that came in, and I was like able to work and manage it, you know, just like, and it is a very, not everybody wants to work with sex offenders. It's a very tricky thing. But for some reason, although I don't agree with anything that person has done,
Of course.
Right.
it's just that these people are still coming back. And I don't say these people, that's not the right word to say, but it's just like people are coming back home from prison, and it's just like, if I don't work with you, who's going to work with you? Like, somebody has to be able to work with them. And then when they saw like how I was able to work and provide supportive services for that individual, they were just like, you're meant to do this sort of work. And they just like uplifted and continued to empower me. And then after that, I was able to get a job at GMAC, an organization called Gangsters Making Astronomical Community Changes.
I've heard of them,
Really dope individual. The founder is, I want to say he's like a big brother to me. Very, very cool individual, somebody that I definitely look up to as a mentor. I would say he gave me a springboard in a sense. So I was one of the, like, I don't want to say founding because he founded the organization, but for their East Flatbush site, I was one of like the first staff to work at that site.
Okay, cool.
And through that, we were working to decrease or stop shootings and killings in community. And although I live in Mill Basin, but I have a lot of strong ties to East Flatbush as well, you know, hanging out, having a lot of friends. So something that was always near and dear to my heart, and also with my past, where it's just like, one, if I would have kept on moving the way I was moving when I was a young person, who's to say, like, what could have happened to me? I could have been incarcerated, God forbid, shot at, or who knows what could have transpired. So it was something, I've had family that have been, you know, shot at, people that I've loved, I've lost them. So it's just, it just felt like everything was moving into place. And I had a place where he would always like just propel me forward, just, you know, having, just being in the space to work with other people and really learning about what community organizing is. And I was able to have like my first smaller girls group, so working with young women that have high risk factors in their lives, and just like being a mentor for them. So that was like my first taste at actually doing that. I never really, besides I was in a sorority in college, but this was very different. So I was able to work with them, and those are, to this day, those are like my babies. I love them. I still bother them. I like follow, like once you're my mentee, I never let you go. And then when I finished working there, I worked for I was working on this project at the Center for Court Innovation, where I was working on the intersections between gun violence and domestic violence, and it was something, again, very near and close to my heart, because I'm really weird with like certain languages and saying domestic violence survivor, and I understand why we would say survivors, but for me it was always like a weird thing to say. But having experienced intimate partner violence and what that's done to me is very important, to learn how to have healthier relationships. Not to say anybody's perfect, you know, there's always going to be a moment. You could have a healthy relationship with unhealthy moments, but what does that really look like? So really looking at the intersections between gun violence and domestic violence, and that was a really dope opportunity for me. I was doing that, we were planning on that in Bedford-Stuyvesant. And oftentimes if you look at gun violence and domestic violence, it's always often very siloed. So it's like somebody gets shot, God forbid, if somebody gets shot and it was like a domestic violence situation, oftentimes it's just looked at as a gun violence issue, and people forget about, but the reasons what led to this was something that was like, and you could think about a million different scenarios of why that can turn into gun violence. Like, let's say two people are dating and, you know, it gets physical. You have a brother or a sister, and they just happen to have a firearm, and they're like, now I'm going to retaliate because you hurt somebody that I love. Right? That's just one scenario.
The Jennifer Hudson situation? Somewhat, kind of, sort of? With the ex coming to, like, shoot
and
kill the family?
And kill everybody. I'm not so sure. I'm not remembering it too much.
I believe this happened, though.
This happened a few years ago. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, and and then also like when you have a firearm in the home within intimate partners, and I'm saying intimate partners because oftentimes all people think it's always like male and female, but it's also same-sex relationships also have intimate partner violence as well. And if you have a firearm in the home, the likelihood of the lethality rate goes up 500%. There's just so many different
500.
Yeah, 500%.
I'm not good at math, but that's crazy.
Yeah, so just thinking about it, and also like gun violence is going down in the city, but one form of violence and violent crime that has not been going down, that's been stagnant, is intimate partner violence, because it's often something people don't really want to talk about. It's a private issue. Don't get in my business. And it's also, I don't want to get in their business because what if now I become harmed? Because bystander intervention is also very tricky. But it was
you try to give them advice and the person still goes back. It's a kind of crazy situation.
Yeah,
very tricky.
Yeah, it's very tricky. But I'm thinking, but just saying, working in those three spaces really helped to springboard me into the work that I do now, and just really understand. And also, while I was at the Center for Court Innovation, they also allowed for me to have a girls group as well. So I had a larger girls group where I worked with like 25 girls that all had high risk factors, and I love those girls to death. And I always say this one story where it's just changing mindsets is the most important thing. Like when we're thinking about youth and how we want to change their mindsets and how do we decrease violence in the community, it's just, it could be small little victories. You can't always, and I tell people all the time, it's just like, if this is the work you want to do, like there's going to be many times where you're just going to be disappointed. You're going to be disappointed more times than you're going to be celebrating. It's just a fact of what happened. So, every time we meet, there's always food because you got to have, you got to have some food. But they always want pizza and fried chicken. And it's just like, I'm like, one day I was just like, I'm getting you different food today. I'm like, so I ordered them all sushi and I didn't even warn them. So think about it. So like,
culture shock.
That's risky.
Culture
It
shock.
was risky.
I still can't get people to eat sushi today.
Hey, yo, what is this?
They were
Why
not.
is my tuna fish cold?
They were like, Hailey, why would you do this to me?
Popeyes,
We hungry.
this ain't on Popeye's menu.
They were upset with me. But I was like, listen, this is just I want you all to try something new. If you don't like it, now you'll know you don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And it's just like, just try something new. And they were like, fine. But I tried to do it a little different. So I didn't get the raw stuff. I got like the tempuras and stuff. You gotta ease
You
people
can't
up.
give them the raw shit.
Yeah, that's it. So they'd be like, you do not love us.
It gotta be fried.
So some of them liked it and other of them didn't. And I was like, okay, well, at least now you know. They were like, all right, that was a cool experience, Hailey, but don't ever do that again to us, for real.
All right, that was cool, but you gotta relax.
But, I'm thinking nothing of it. I was just like, all right, we just tried something new, whatever. Next week you get Chinese food, whatever it is that you want, I'll get it for you because you all at least tried.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I want to say a few days later on the weekend, I think that's the third time I hit this microphone.
I do it all the time.
They went on a college tour. And I think they just went to Brooklyn College, but they just want to go see what the campus looked like. And they were going to go get food. And the group of girls were like, there was some that was like, oh, let's go to Burger King. And they was like, no, remember Hailey said we got to try something new. And they went to Chipotle. And it sounds like something so small, right? But it's just like
Something big to them.
It's something big because you're thinking about, Chipotle, like people, but they never had Chipotle before. And the fact that they could even say like, I don't want Burger King. She said, let's try something new. We never had this before. Let's go for it. I was like, that was a really small victory for me where it's just like, that's a small friend. Just changing mindsets.
Yeah, because it could start at food and then it could just be
just
for
like different
anything
things.
else.
It could be anything. Yeah. And then one thing that I thought was really dope about the curriculum that I had built at that time was, so every week I was like, I'm going to teach them something that they don't learn in school. So I'm going to teach them about microaggressions because I didn't know about that. I would teach them about financial literacy. I would teach them about how to have a healthy relationship. I would teach them about people that look like them, black and brown people that look like them, that you don't really get shine the spotlight. Like February and Black History Month, you get spoken about just like for a month. Like it's just like
with the same 5 people that they
with the same 5 people with the history that they want to say. So we would have like different conversations about that so that they can see themselves in people because representation matters. And then on the second day we meet twice a week. And on the second day of the week where we met, I brought young women, young women that look like them to come in and talk about the work that they do and like what does it feel like being a young woman of color in whatever field. So I had traditional and non-traditional fields come in and just so they can know what's out there because you could be an entrepreneur as well. You don't necessarily have to, not saying that you can't be a teacher or a doctor or a lawyer. Those are all great professions, but it's not for everybody. So it's like open their minds to other things so they know that they don't have to be narrow. Yeah, there's a lot of options out there. Like even right now in New York City, I think there's more. There's so many jobs available right now. There's more jobs than there are people to fill the jobs. But there's skill levels or the interest people don't know that they're out there. So it's really weird dynamic, but just so that they can know that that's there. And there was one person in particular that had came, my friend Alora, she's dope. She travels the world, and she had came and spoke to her, and the girls loved it. They were like, wait, what do you do that you get to travel so much? And they're just thinking about like, because you have to think about so many young people, they don't leave their block, they don't leave their neighborhood.
Yeah.
And they're seeing another black woman that looks like them going to Greece, going to Egypt, going to all these dope places that they've never roamed. Like they're like, what? Like you can do this? If you can do this, I can do this. And they were talking about it for weeks. They're like, yeah, because I'm gonna go away and I'm gonna be in a boat.
Next stop, Dubai.
Yeah, but they're talking about it.
Chipotle on the yacht.
Yeah, Chipotle on the yacht.
Come
and these
see
are
me.
exactly
With extra guac.
With extra guac. Yes, always say yes to the extra guac. Like yes, I want it.
That's when you made it.
That's when you made it, right? But I thought that was so dope. So I thought that was like cool what I did with that curriculum, and it made me want to start Civically Engaged because it's just like I think I have pretty good ideas, and again I don't have the answers to everything because every day I'm learning as well. Like so, I was just like, well, what can I do to continue to amplify the work that I've already been doing and continue to empower young women that have been impacted by institutional racism, oppression, different systems of oppression and what that looks like, and how do you help them, and also how to help young women that have been impacted by violence, whatever that means, whether it was violence on them, violence in their families, whatever it is that they've experienced. Like, how do you bring them in? Because there's so many times where, like, going back to my girls from the group that I was running, it was called Her Life at the time. And these are young people that continue to have doors closed on them. You're planting seeds in so many other people, other young people. They might not get it today. They might not get it tomorrow. 3 years down the line, they'll be like, oh, I remember that conversation that I had. And then they'll put it into practice in motion. So I don't ever think any lesson isn't a lesson lost. So I just wanted to create an organization to do that. And also putting, especially like with, 45 coming into place. And also when you think about women in the political realm, the political arena, when you look at just women in general, significantly lower amount of women that are in seats nationally. Then when you think about women of color, that shrinks. That's why it was cool, like right now in Congress, what's happening, where there were a lot of women, different people of color. You see, Native American women, Latino women, Black women, Muslim. Trans, Muslim. You're seeing all these things happen, and it's just like, oh, that's dope, but we can continue to amplify and augment that on a larger scale. Right. But what's important is that I just assessed that, there's some sort of a gap here where who's talking to young people, the young girls with lived experiences as well. So it's just like they could know that they can also be civically engaged as well, that they can be out and use their lived experiences to propel other people forward. And that doesn't necessarily have to be being political, but just being a public servant, just being a person in a community that cares about yourself and what's around you, and just becoming more aware. So that's the reason why I created Civically Engaged. So that kind of like brought me to.
Yeah, that was
very long-winded.
You answered like half of our questions.
Question number 2.
You answered like all of our questions.
Well, you just said stuff from the beginning, so to be fair,
this is true.
You literally asked for it.
Yeah, but I always ask people of that, and they usually just stop after 2 sentences.
Sorry, also disclaimer: I
was born, I was here. Next,
I was about to just walk away from the mic. It was like, she got this.
Word.
I'm not needed. So, well, okay. So you mentioned the nonprofit that you started, and you mentioned the goals of it. So how does it vary, or what's the major difference in comparison to other establishments that are made? Because I think right now is probably the highest concentration of just women entrepreneurs that are crafting businesses and things of that nature. And more so recently, we hear about these stories of like the fake women empowerment. So you'll go to these events, and the people that's on the panel, they don't really engage with anybody. They give their little spiel, and they fucking walk away. And when you approach them, they're not really personable and things of that nature. So how is your establishment different, and what is your opinion based on those other groups that operate like that?
So I'll say what's different. What's different is that we're still working on getting our feet really on the ground right now, and just really trying to do a real assessment of what the needs really are, and how we can really be effective and meaningful. Being meaningful and effective in the work that we're trying to do. And also, again, working with young women of color that have been disenfranchised, right? That have had these lived experiences. So that's how I would say make us a little different. And also that I have a lived experience as well. So oftentimes there are many, I feel like I've been saying oftentimes a lot, but there are many not-for-profit organizations that are well-intentioned, but the top down doesn't look like everybody watching Secure, right? So like white hand, black kids sort of situation where you have these organizations that are mainly white organizations that are working in goodwill or good faith to help community. Like, let's go out and like save these kids.
Their needs.
And you might empathize. You might really empathize. Let's say like you might really empathize.
Yeah, you might be genuine.
Let's say you're genuine. You empathize.
Y'all.
We got y'all. What's the problem, right? But at the same time, it's like, but do you really understand? Like, and it's great to have white allies and people that are really intentional about doing the work. But it's also very important to have people that look like them also doing the work. So that's what I would say. And not to say that they're not doing great work. There are organizations doing great work, but it's good to have representation from the top down.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and you go to some organizations and you go up there and no one looks like you. But then when you go down to the smaller or like the more grassroots level part of that sort of organization, then you're like, okay, here are the people that look like me. But where's what does leadership like? What's mobility looking like? Like what? Right. So, although like super small organization, there's only 3 of us right now. Myself, my friend Angie, and my friend Catherine. It's just us right now. Really working on building this. But I already see that when we do it, we're really trying to be when we do continue to expand
and grow,
that we're going to be very intentional in that way. And when we're talking about the fake women empowerment, I kind of laughed inside at the same time, because at first I'm like, what does fake women empowerment mean, right? What does that mean? But I do understand what it could look like when you go to. So I go to I've sat on a lot of panels. I've also been to a lot of panels, and the other day somebody was like, "Why don't you have a panel and as your next event?" And I was just like, I breathed for a second because I was just like, it's so easy to put a bunch of women together that are doing something, right? It's like, okay, you have this, but what's the next step? Like you're just gonna talk and then hopefully something resonates and somebody is like, okay, that might have been cool, but then it's just like, what's next? Yeah. So so it's just like, I'm not against doing a panel or wanting to have a discussion, but I just would want to put something that's way more meaningful together, because I go to these things all the time and you just hear people speak. Sometimes you get really compelling people, but other times it's just like you just putting anybody together to have a conversation.
It's the yes sis movement. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, and I get it, and it should be yes sis, right? It should be like everybody's like yes, everybody. Let's uplift each other, right? Especially women need to hold each other down, right? More than what we're doing. But it's just like, what is the intention? And I want to say, I believe that they're being done with good intentions, right? It's not about, I believe that most of the time they're being done with good intentions. However, you have to, if you're having an event about a certain issue, you really need to do your homework and your research on it. I shouldn't go to your event and then like more harm has been caused, right? In a sense, so I feel like there's also events where it's just like they're well-intentioned events, but then at the end you kind of leave with like, wait a minute, did I get the help that I needed, or did they use the correct language, and that happens a lot, in a lot of different spaces. So that's kind of how I feel about like the fake. I don't know about, is it fake woman empowerment? Because like, what does fake woman empowerment really mean in this sense?
I mean, it was only from the standpoint from what I've heard, because I don't attend these events, but from what I'm seeing, what I've been told is like they go to this stuff and it's basically the person just showcasing who they are. They're not really giving you knowledge. It's like, oh, I've accomplished A, B, C, D, E. Then when they try to introduce themselves and really network and try to talk to these people, it's kind of like,
it's very surface level.
I ain't really trying to talk to you.
I stopped going to them. I feel like it's just a popularity thing,
Yeah.
honestly. And especially when it comes to the borough of Brooklyn. Like everybody, like Brooklyn is like a whole socialite type situation.
Yeah, it's not even really like,
it's
not really like I'm trying to showcase anything to provide information.
Help you. It's just I'm showing up to look cute for Instagram and take pictures with every other socialite in Brooklyn.
Yeah, like look at this event I crafted. I got all these people to come pull up for me, and then I'm out.
It's an episode of Hustle in Brooklyn.
That's what exactly is.
Yeah.
It's that.
So, and I do get that, and that's why I'm like, sometimes I really, when we were talking about before, you were like, all right, you come into the, I have the conversation. I was like, I'm very weird about where I go and I speak sometimes, because it's just like when you do speak in certain places, or when you go to certain events and you put your brand on it, or because you are your own brand, right? That means you agree. That kind of like you kind of agree. So if you're in a specific arena, you go to an event, and then let's say that person is, I'm trying to use an example right now. Whatever. Let's say the person is an anti. Damn, what's a good example?
Public figure. Go on.
It's a public figure. Person's a public figure. Like, I don't want to say like a domestic violence or a gun situation. We'll say gun violence. Whatever. The person is having an anti-gun violence event, and I go, I shake hands. I'm like, it's great to empower each other. But then at the same time, the person has like a bunch of guns in their car.
What?
Right? Like, let's just say like a wild example.
Sorry.
Like a wild example.
No, this was real.
This has not happened. This has not happened at all with anybody.
Okay. Yeah,
no, but I'm just saying, like, as an example, it's like the hypocrisy. Like, it's the hypocrisy, right?
No, not with a gun. Don't be a fool.
No, I'm just saying like hypocrisy in a sense, right? Or, you're going there and I'm going to an event with you. We're talking anti this and let's move forward. But then you have all of this
You're
stuff.
not living the life.
You're not living the life that
portray.
you're saying. Or if you're just having a woman empowerment event, but then the next time I look on your social media and you're tearing women down, right? Or or just. Or you're saying that you do something for work, and in all actuality you're scamming, right. or you're doing a whole bunch, and it's like you're doing this, but it's just like, but it's not real. It's not real. So it's just like, it just makes things a lot more difficult. So I definitely understand it looking like a popularity contest. I do feel like a lot of them are well intentioned. I do feel like there are a lot that are like just a socialite thing, and that's why I get turned off sometimes. Where it's just like I'm about this work.
Not going.
Like I'm really about this work. I'm out here like at nighttime. Like somebody gives me a call that somebody got shot in the head. I'm over there to give services. And I know it sounds crazy, but like a few weeks ago I had a mother that had gotten shot in the head in Brownsville. And I'm over there with their family providing services. So just because I might not post about it every day, I don't have to post about the work that I do for likes.
All the time.
So it's not about that all the time. It's about like what do you do when the cameras are off? What do you do when nobody's listening? And that's the important stuff for me. So it's just like, I think the events are great, but I just feel like they might have good intention, but they need to be they might have good meaning, but they need real intention behind it and real resources.
Right.
Mhm.
Because if somebody's going there to learn something, and it's great to have a conversation, but you can go on YouTube and get like some inspirational stuff, right?
This
Like,
is true.
what am I really going there to get besides some mimosas and some pancakes? Like, what is really
Wait a minute.
what is really happening?
Mimosas
And pancakes are great, but I'm just using it as an example, or just like, or just a
Focus,
dinner,
please.
or just a dinner, or you get free drinks or whatever it is. It's so much bigger than that. And it's a great way to pull people. But it's just like, it's in the messaging.
Right.
It's just all in the messaging.
No, it's walk it like you talk it. One-on-one.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I think for a lot of those type of events, I mean, it could be a lot of loopholes in the sense of like how it's structured. You know what I'm saying? It could be the fault of that, where it's like, all right, we have an intention, but it goes off the rails because these personalities might overrule it with their, with just talking about themselves and not exactly what
Providing
the basis
information.
of, right, providing information, what the basis of those type of panels or talks are. And then on top of that, it's like, there's no action items at the end. It's just like, hey, we showed up, dropped some jewels. Yes, sis, you said it. And then, oh, that was great. I'm gonna go home. You know what I'm saying? Like, where does the conversation lead to? Where does actual physical?
What happens next?
Yeah, what happens next? And most of these panels or most of these type of conferences or discussions don't really have the what's next. It's just what's happening now.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? We know the problem now, but what then?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree 100%. And that's why every time I'm on a panel or if I'm in a space, I always have a call to action. Like, there's always something that somebody should be able to do after a conversation. And you don't have to do anything crazy. It doesn't have to be anything like huge. Like, okay, all right, tomorrow I'm running for office. No, it doesn't have to be that. It could be something as small as, you know what, today I never talked to my neighbor. I'm gonna say hi and let them know who I am. You know, it could be something as small as that, or depending on whatever it is. There's just different ways to build supportive networks, but it's just like, what are you gonna do to make a change today, from something so small to something big? And it's just, and that's different for everybody. But there should definitely be some sort of, like, so for example, there's a public advocate. Now I'm getting political. So there's a special election coming up in February, and people oftentimes only go and vote where it's like the president or like the mayor, but there's so many other things that are happening that really affect you, like in the short, like that affect your day to day. But nobody really goes out and votes for that. So you're misinformed. You're not voting for the right people. You just go down the line. You're like, okay, like this person,
don't vote at all.
You don't vote at all. But these are the people that are voting on what money should go into your schools and your districts. These are the people that are voting on what your street should look like. These are the people that are voting on criminal justice policies that really definitely affect you. Like, that's what you should definitely be like. Yeah, it's great to go and vote for president. It's great to vote for the governor, but what are you doing about the day to day? So there's definitely a special election that is coming up. I want to say it's on February 26th for a public advocate, and that's a person that really goes out. It's usually like the seat right before you want to go to mayor. It's like one of those like seats that propel you forward. But that's really like it provides oversight and really listens to different agencies and really listens to community members and really fights for people. And not a lot of people even know that position even exists.
I've heard of it before, but I didn't know about. To be fair, the publication or the publicizing of these type of special
are not, and it's by design. And sometimes we want to say, it's by design as well, right? It's by design to keep people. Yeah, it is February 26th. Yeah, I wrote it down.
There you go.
Notes, go vote. Go vote. But it's on a very small scale. But it's just like, what are you doing? Because if you don't vote, somebody that does not believe in what you believe in will go and vote. Right. So it's just like, think about it like that. It's like, if I'm not going out there and doing something, somebody else that might not agree with what I'm fighting for, you can't be on the sideline complaining and not doing anything. And it only takes about 10 minutes.
Why you such your teeth?
Because she knows that life.
She fed up with them.
Because you can always hear about that person that's like, you're doing something. It's just like, oh man, if I don't know how you're doing it. If I was doing it, I would do it like this. But are you doing it?
Yeah.
Did you take the time out?
We all know somebody like that.
Oh, we all do.
Yeah. So
locked. Do not disturb.
It's like, oh, I would like to do something for the kids. Okay, so I'm having an event. You want to come out? Or I'm going to a rally. One of the organizations that I work with are having a shooting response. You want to help me come?
Oh, I was thinking like a baby shower or some shit. Like.
No.
Is there gonna be mimosas? Gun violence rally?
But it's like, but we all agree. I'm sorry. We all agree that we don't want shootings and killings in our community.
Absolutely.
We all agree that we want a safer, more resilient neighborhood. We all agree on that. But who are you really like? What are you doing for? What role are you playing in it? And it could be something as easy as a conversation. If you hanging out with somebody, like if you're out here promoting what they're doing, like, yes, get your guns, yeah, do this, and you're promoting all this behavior that's, if you really love somebody, you're not going to promote that on them because you could lose that person. You could lose them to the street life or to prison. And I don't know if anybody, you know, been in a jail cell or been to a jail, but like I used to do workshops in jails, and that's not a place anybody wants to be in. And usually we see that, in, you know, in our communities, a lot of times we see that young people see that as a rite of passage at one point in their lives, right? And it's not a rite of passage. It's not college. It's not something you can. That's not something that you. And I'll go and I'll speak at schools, and I just ask them, I'm like, hey, raise your hands if you want somebody to tell you what to eat every single day and tell you when to wake up. And like, no hands go up. I'm like, raise your hand if you want to use a bathroom with no door. Raise your hand if you want to be you want to live in a room that's small in a bathroom or is the same size of a bathroom. Nobody raises their hand because nobody wants to go to jail. Nobody wants to be away from the people that they love. You know, so it's just like, why would you not try to stop or like try to change somebody's mind frame? And it's also women as well. I feel like we also have a space, and we always want to uplift our partners and uplift, you know, the men that are in our lives. I'm just saying men because we're just talking about like men going to, you know, if men go to jail or whatever. But if you really love them, like, we have so much, we influence men a lot more than we think we do. And when we allow certain behaviors, if certain behaviors make them think that they could get more girls, and that's what they're going to do, right? So, but if we don't think that's cool anymore, that's like that Chirac kind of, it was like, what was it, no peace, no P word? It was something like that, but it was pretty much, yeah, so it was just like, and yeah, that might be like super like out there, but it's just like, in a sense, it's just like, what are we accepting in our lives? And it's just like, with the men and just the people that we love in our lives, like what are we talking about? What are our conversations? And again, talking about civic engagement and like changing mind frames, even when you're in a space and you could use it to educate someone, I'm always the one like ruining, like, why you gotta be the one to always ruin the mood? But it's like, that's not how you should talk about people, like, you know, locker room talk, right? If you're a man in a space, right, and guys are talking about, yeah, I'm gonna smash this, and yeah, you know, I do this to women, and I do this and I do that. It's just like, but that's, you know, it's part of toxic masculinity, and so it's like, what are you doing as somebody to be like, are you gonna sit back if you don't agree with it? I'm saying, right, you're not agreeing with it. Are you gonna sit there and just laugh because you're like, because you know it's the norm, you just stay with the status quo? Or you gonna be like, yo, you know, I don't really think about it like that, you know, and challenge it and just be like, but you know, a lot of times people just let it rock. It's just, and I'm just using that as an example, but we can be in so many different spaces where we can help to change the narrative, you know, and just propel people forward in a more positive way. So civic engagement could be many things. It can be volunteering. It could be being, you know, part of different organizations, rally, clergy. But it could also just be part of conversations on our day-to-day. So, yeah.
So other than what you have going on, what are some other programs for the youth, for troubled youth? So that are out there.
There's so many. There's really a lot of programs out there. So a few that I will talk about. We do have. So my day job, I do work at the mayor's office of to prevent gun violence, and we contract with a lot of different organizations, and a lot of them work with youth with high risk factors. So there are so many organizations that are part of this, the New York City Crisis Management System. So if you do look up the website, you can find the different organizations that are out there. So in Brooklyn, we have GMAC that we have spoken before. We have SOS, Save Our Streets for both Bed-Stuy, Crown Heights. We have Man Up in East New York. We have Operation Hood in Coney Island. We have Bevo in Brownsville. And then they have so many other supportive services as well that tie into the work that they do. There's so many other organizations that are out there doing the great work. And I'm making sure I'm not missing anybody. I don't think I'm missing anybody, but they all do really fantastic work with young people and really have helped to. So New York City is actually the safest it's ever been, and sometimes we don't really see that because we still hear about people getting shot and getting hurt. But if you look online and you see the data from the 1990s until now, like, it's completely different.
Nice with New Jack City.
Yeah, and it's crazy.
To this day.
Yeah, and I think about it, and I'm like, how did my parents navigate that? How did my parents navigate that? Because it was crazy, right?
Yeah, I thought about that randomly sometimes. It's like, yo, y'all was really like.
I mean, but our parents were busy working. They didn't have time to be.
And they had real jewelry. It wasn't like, you know, like they had real jewelry.
Yeah, but still,
they had, like, real,
back
like,
then there was no honor code. Like, dudes was pulling up on everybody.
I mean, you guys didn't grow up how I grew up. I grew up in Brownsville. Yeah. And Van Dyke houses and in Tilden and literally Brownsville projects. So I do remember being young and like having to duck into the barrels. Barrels, like, you know, the little small parts, the barrels you hide in, and having to run with my little sister when she was little, and like ducking the barrels when it was having drive-by shootings, or when the guys was running through the parks and through the different intersections of the projects and shooting at each other. Like, I remember stuff like that. I remember when I would be on one side of the park and my sister's with a family friend, and they're riding their bike, and then they start shooting. So automatically my mother just panicked, like, where's your sister? And I'm like, I don't know where she's at. She's with, you know, the family friend. I'm like, hopefully they're all right. So I remember times like that when I look back on it, so when you said like the girls got excited about eating Chipotle, I come from a time to where, as me and my sister look back on and we laugh, people like, yo, like, we dead ass be like hopping in and out of cabs, like we spend this much money on that. It's like kind of like a humbling experience, and it's very shocking. Like, we've come from this, and I can literally sit here now and go out and spend fucking like $70 on a foundation, like little stuff. It's like,
to a lot of people, you're a success story.
It's crazy, and I still don't. We still struggle to this day, and we still have struggles that, you know, myself and my sister, my mom are going through, but it's nothing compared to what we were going through before. And like, so when y'all brought that up, like, I don't know how the parents, like, I legit remember ducking like in Sacman behind like an abandoned building because somebody got into altercation with my cousin. They came back to shoot, and we was all outside. Like, stuff like that. I remember and I was little. I'm only 31. I remember being 7, 8 years old.
And stuff like that.
And stuff like that happening.
To your current PTSD.
To PTSD. And even at work now, the girls were like, yo, Nieema, you've come a long way. Like, you don't even say nothing no more. I'm like, I'm getting too old to always feel like I gotta be like, what? Like, it's, that's the point of peace. Like, somebody say something to you. It's like, I'm not at work no more. I feel like I'm on the block, and so you think I'm pussy? Like, literally, that's what pops in your head. It's a form of PTSD because you feel like someone's like really trying to get you.
Challenging you.
Yeah. Right. And it takes a lot to even take that out. Like, even for me, like, it took a long time for me to, and the work that I do has also been very helpful for me as well, because even from a few years ago, like, I haven't had a fight in like years. Fight.
You just fight for people, and you're not fighting.
You know, like, maybe
for the people.
I'm like breaking it up. You know, like interrupting the violence.
That's your tagline.
Right?
Now.
Yeah, that's the slogan. 2020.
Because you might be breaking it up, but, you know, people might be like, oh, we can't, like, you know, trying to break it apart. But it takes a long time to even think about, like, even getting hot and upset. Like, and I'm like, even if you catch yourself, like, everybody, we're imperfect people. Like, I have moments, and I'm just like, same thing. Like, do you know who I am?
Right.
But at the same time, it's just like, I've come so far, and I can't be a hypocrite in the work that I do. Where it's just like, I have so many people that are looking up to me, and so many people.
All the work you've already done.
Exactly, and it's like, I don't even think about people looking up to me until like somebody would like send me a DM, and they're like, yo, like, I just want to like tell you, like, thank you for the good work that you're doing. I'm like, what? I'm like, thank you. And I always respond. I always respond to people when they write me stuff like that. And it's just like, and I really appreciate it, because it keeps me in perspective. And like, sometimes people might not even realize that, but if you're sending me a text or a DM or like just anything, just saying like, yo, I really appreciate you and the work that you're doing is dope, that means a lot to me, and it really keeps everybody going. And sometimes you have to check, you know, on your strong friend. So it's like a lot of people that do this work is like, you also, it's a lot of vicarious trauma as well. So a lot of the stories that you hear, you know, even like in Brownsville, there's a young boy named Timmy that had gotten shot and killed in a basketball court a few months ago. That broke my heart. It was so sad. And it's just so many, and there was a young girl. Again, this was also in Brownsville. She had gotten shot in the head twice while she was pregnant. And that story,
I remember that story.
When I started doing the work where I'm at now, and seeing that, like, when I run into her, she's a miracle. Like, when I first saw her walking, I started crying. And that's because I'm very invested in the work that I do, and just seeing her, I'm like, this is a success story. Like, she was still able to have her baby. She was 5 months pregnant when that happened. And it's mind-blowing. It's just mind-blowing, but it puts everything into perspective. Like, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. This is why I wake up every day. This is why it's important for me to be, you know, an ally with people that are doing the right work and doing it with intention. And again, like, there's so many spaces to intentionally or unintentionally cause harm, but that's why it's like every day's a learning experience, and every day you're trying to be better with what you're doing. And very similar to like the story you were saying, like there was a shootout. I was my grandmother, rest in peace. We went on the laundromat, and I'm just seeing like droves of people running, and like these people like just shooting, like. And it's just like as a kid, they hid me behind a washing machine. And it's just like I was probably maybe like 6 or 7 years old, and I still remember that day.
Yeah.
And it's just these scary moments. It's just, but these are things that not everybody deals with. That has to deal with. You know, it's just. And we talk about like mass shootings, and now it's like, oh no, but now everybody is dealing with shootings now. It's like, because you know even white people are being affected now, but it's just like,
hey,
but it's like when you think about there's mass shooting. A mass shooting is three people. All it takes is, and that's happening in our communities on a daily basis. So it's like, yeah, I understand. It's great for everybody to have this conversation, whatever it takes to have, you know, reform or like gun reform. Great, let's have those conversations, but at the same time, you cannot keep black people out of that conversation. You cannot keep Latinos out of that conversation, because we have been killing each other or being killed, right? Because you also have to account for like law enforcement, like all the and white supremacists and other people that have been killing us for years. Mass shootings have been happening to us for a very long time.
It's just now documented.
It's just now it's being documented, right? Or now.
No, I'm just saying. No,
when there's a different face.
I wasn't. I really didn't realize that. I'm saying to this day, like we've been.
We get it.
But this one, anyway.
But yes,
Jesus.
we get it. But if, you know, it's just again maybe going off on a tangent, but it's just really important that You know, just because the faces look different, now more people want to care about it. And it's just like, but this has been happening.
Yeah, I was thinking about that on my way to the studios. Like, it's crazy how now you have the white kids in the schools getting shot at. Now it's like this whole big national thing. And it's like, we have little kids every fucking day that are getting shot at by their own, by others, like, but nobody ever cares.
Yeah.
So, and also going back to like the different organizations for the young people, another organization that I think is dope is Children of Promise. They're a really dope organization.
I profiled them for a series that I work on. They're really dope. They work with kids that parents are incarcerated in Brooklyn.
I think you told us about that one.
Yeah, I profiled them a while back. Mr. Walker, he's a dope guy.
Yeah, I've always like, sometimes when a lot of times when people ask me like what kind of organizations, I always like say like that's a good organization to volunteer for as well. I've always wanted to volunteer for it, but I'm always like doing so many things, but I'm like, I'm gonna make time one day to
They have weekend programs too.
They have weekend programs. They have nights, and it's really, really cool. And it's like mentors for young kids that, you know, that their parents are incarcerated, and I always like to bring them into the space, even if I'm not available to do it. If somebody else is available, I think it's a very humbling experience, and also definitely giving back to young people that, you know, just need somebody to like help support them, because all it takes is somebody that cares. You know, that's all it takes is somebody that cares. And also, again, Civically Engaged, my organization as well, we're gonna be working on getting some mentees put together so we can start groups soon. Girls Leading Up is another organization in East Flatbush that's been starting doing some good work as well. Farrah Lewis is working on that for young women. Again, the different crisis management sites. Also, clergy. There's a lot of clergy doing dope work. I mean, sometimes we keep them out of the conversation, but there's a lot of really cool, like, clergy folks, especially I want to say, like, East Flatbush, that are doing really intentional work out there, like, with gun violence and just with, you know, just keeping their community safe. And there's so many different ways to keep your community safe, you know, just like, again, with the conversations, but you can also occupy your blocks. You can help kids coming home from school, like safe corridors. Like, there's so many different things that you could do with young people and keeping people safe. And we have, so there's this thing that a lot of the organizations that I do work with do is called shooting responses. And I had a conversation with an individual a few weeks ago, and they were like, well, people are just on bullhorn screaming. And I'm like, but do you understand what that's doing at this moment? It's showing that this is not normal. So, like, somebody's disrupting, you know, we're disrupting your day-to-day in community, right? Because, like, right here, a shooting took place here today. And we want everybody to know that shooting took place, this is what happened, and we don't condone this in our communities, because we don't say that. So you have people that really care, that go out into your community, and they're on the bullhorn saying this, because it's making you think, like, wait, you may just walk by, and maybe you're listening, you're not listening, but at the same time, it's just like,
wait, what?
Yeah, what, there was a shooting here? Like, how? And then people are giving resources. Not only are you on a bullhorn saying that you can go here to get help. Do you know a young person that needs some supportive services? You can bring them here to our organization, or, you know, we could refer them out to somebody else, and just like working together. That as other communities have supportive networks, but in our communities we're like already in our own silos. We go to work, we do this, we don't have time to help other people. But other communities really uplift and hold each other. Like, if you were to fail, I don't be like, Steven over here, just, you know, forget about him. Like, just let him go. He's gonna continue to go down his path. I mean, right? But, or it's just like, wait, come here, let me talk to you, let me bring you in, and like, let's really care about you and really see what's going on. Are you okay?
Are you
know,
okay,
just. Are you okay?
Well, since you asked,
I mean, we're talking about saving lives here.
Yeah.
It starts in this room.
Stressful.
Work
has really been stressful. I gotta wake up at like 5 a.m. now. It's crazy.
Oh, that's out of control. Thinking about love for work. That is love for work. Waking up at 5 in the morning. Sheesh. That's crazy.
But look, there's a question that's been on the tip of my tongue since the conversation. So with all this work you're doing, right, you're affecting so many lives, and especially with the youth, which is really dope. Do you feel, in your honest opinion, that the experiences that you've went through in your past, as you talked about, like, you know, your affiliation with like gang activity and all that stuff, do you feel like those experiences kind of helped you, like, fuel your work in the sense of, let's say if you didn't go through all those things, do you think you would still have the same impact with the youth or the people that you're working with than if you were to have gone through those experiences? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I would think that I can make some sort of an impact, but I don't know if the impact would be the same, because I know people that don't have the lived experience, that they do good work, right? But there's something about just having that lived experience where somebody could really listen to you, because they know that, okay, you know what it feels like to get in, you know, to a fight. You know what it feels like to.
That empathy is there.
Yeah, it's like the empathy versus, like, you know, lived experience.
Because a lot of times those people feel like they're the only ones that's ever dealt with that.
Yeah.
So when they actually have a conversation with somebody, it's like, oh, you went through that too?
Exactly.
Because a lot of times you feel alone when you're in a really effed up place.
Yeah, it's like I know what it feels like to have to take the long way home, because if I took the shorter way, I probably wouldn't make it home, or I'd get jumped. I know what it feels like to have a whole lunchroom follow me out, me by myself. Like I know what it feels like to be afraid, and it's just, and to also, I know what it feels like to pretend you're something that you're not. It's like going back to when I was joking around, like I was a Spice Girls fan, like I'm out here, but at the same time, it's like the days that I would want to laugh, I couldn't even laugh. And that's deep, like,
because that's like a sign of weakness.
Because it's like a sign of weakness, because it's like, oh, she laughing, she having a good day. All right, let me find a really quick way to.
She like Spice Girls, word.
Yeah,
all right.
Start stepping on the lollipops.
Right? Yeah, man, those lollipops were good. Those Chupa Chups.
Facts.
Talk about it, sis.
Of course.
They were good. Everybody.
You crazy?
You didn't like them?
I did. I just didn't think boys were into
You don't
it.
like flavor?
Do you not like the taste goods?
I mean, come
Talking
on.
about?
You're wilding.
That was Spice Girls, Pokemon time. That was
serious?
It's Spice Girls for life, for a reason.
I went to the reunion tour.
To this day.
When they first came back. It was like, Jay-Z, the Watch the Throne tour was like my favorite all-time concert, but the Spice Girls had that one.
Oh, you had to go to watch the Spice tour. That's dope. It's Jay-Z and the Spice Girls. They together.
All right.
That
cut
one?
his mic.
Oh my
Yo,
God,
Grant,
don't
take
threaten
his
me with
mic
a good
off.
time.
Yo,
Don't
Grant,
threaten me
Grant,
with a good time.
Cut off his mic, please. I beg you.
Watch the Spice tour.
So yeah, but just bringing it back, it's just knowing how it feels to just have those experiences makes it that much more impactful, because you could really talk from a place like, I know exactly what you're feeling right now, like, and then I could share my experience, and I'm like, but look where I'm at now. Like, this is not your NOB, and I'm not saying like this is not my NOB. I hope that I'm in a space where I can continue to, just continue up and progress, but I want to bring people with me when I do that, because again, I don't have all of the answers, and what good is it for me to propel forward and not help bring other people from like, even where I work right now, like my boss and the team that I work with, they're dope people, like individuals, like great people that all come from, like, I think the majority of us come from like NYCHA backgrounds, or we come from the same neighborhoods that we're trying to serve, and we understand the dynamic, and just creating a space for, like, maybe I wouldn't, if somebody didn't believe in me, maybe I wouldn't be here today, but it's like, you gave me a chance, you gave somebody else a chance. It's just like, now what do I do with that opportunity? I have to pay that forward as well, where it's just like the times that I've had interns, my interns will be like, oh, Hailey, she's like crazy to work with, but we have great relationships to this day, because every intern that I've ever had, I've only had 3 that I've really worked with, very deeply, and they're all employed and all have really good jobs now, and like straight out of college, and these are all women of color. These are all women like coming straight out of undergrad, like working in their field and making an impact. So it's just like, and anytime that they need me, I'm there for them. Oh, give me a letter of reference, or I have an interview tomorrow. Like, could we do a mock interview? And I'll be on the phone. I mock interview with them. And I ask them questions, and I'll be like, I didn't like how that sounded. Like, let's work on that. Like, what does that sound like? And then again, I need that as well. So it's just like, again, the each one teach one and pay it forward. So
You're like endless skating out here, because you're killing it.
Thank you. I
That's dope.
appreciate that. I appreciate that. But that's what it's about. It's just, spreading love and just positivity. Even when we're not feeling positive, like, even. And I think those are the words. Those are the times where you really need to give positivity out, when you're not in that great space. Just like the little bit that you have, you put it out there, and then again, like with the Alchemist, it's like, if you put that out there, it comes right back to you. Absolutely.
So really quick, because we are over on time.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys. Sorry, I took too
much.
No, it's fine. You recently became a professor at Brooklyn College. So speak on that in like 3 words or less.
3 words or less.
Right. First, congrats.
Yeah, so thank you.
Word,
so
congrats.
I teach at a school I was not accepted to. Dope. Like, super
Right.
dope, right?
Joke's on them.
That's my 3 words.
Pop
I
up
was
like
not
Gucci, like
accepted
I'm back.
there.
Right.
Yeah. And I had a great opportunity to teach child welfare. Yeah, to this day.
Yeah,
To this day.
What do you teach?
I teach child welfare, and I really got it could be a long story, but short story. I got really I put it out there, I put it in the universe,
And it
came back to
Came
me in a
back.
moment that I didn't even expect it. So it was like an unfortunate situation for somebody else became a blessing for me, and I was just like, I want to teach. I'll teach child welfare. I'm like, I was a child, I could do this, but teaching child welfare, lived experiences, adverse childhood experiences, what that does to people, but also teaching people practicality. So it's just like, I wanted to actually teach you, like, what this work really looks like, and building scenarios. So it's like not just textbook. I'm like, this is what I've done at work, and I would bring speakers all the time for them to really get an understanding of the work that they're doing, because if they're working at, like, let's say ACS or foster care, like, they need to know that they really have impact. So if you need to treat case number 1 the same way you treat case number 257. You know, like, what does that look like? So it was my first run. I think I did good, a lot of learning, you know, lessons learned, but they brought me back on for another semester, so super dope, yeah, and it's cool, it feels good, and I really like my first class, they were cool.
That's dope.
So that was my short story, but
good job.
I like teaching
I have faith
that's
in
cool.
you.
Harvard on the Junction, we lit.
I think that's all. I don't think we have
Does anyone
anything
have
else.
other
Yeah,
questions
that was really dope.
Thank you for having me. This is
We'll
fun.
put everything, like all the programs you mentioned, we'll put it in like the show bio or whatever. I'll make sure we'll put that in there. And I think that's it.
Yeah, I think that's about it too. I mean, if people could people enroll in your class like anybody? Just.
Well, if you go to Brooklyn College,
I mean,
if you're undergraduate at Brooklyn College,
I can't just walk on the campus. Like,
well, I think so. No, you could come like and visit a class. Yeah, you could. I think you could have like the times where you could go to a class and just like observe.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's time.
Yeah. If you want to do that. Yeah, and also, if anybody is interested or wants to learn more about Civically Engaged or how they could become civically engaged, they could definitely email me Hailey Hailey at getcivicallyengaged.com. I mean .org. Sorry, .org.
Oh, big facts.
Yeah, sorry. Like .com, you will not get me. I promise.
.org.
Spam.
Yeah.
Spam.
Put the stamp on it.
So yeah, Hailey at getcivicallyengaged.org.
Any social media handles you want to share?
Yes, Hailey Hailey _N_, and also Get Civically Engaged. Those are the 2 hashtags.
I'll put everything in the show bio because people won't pay attention.
But yeah, follow.
Still spell my name wrong.
Who?
Everybody.
Oh, I thought you meant me. I was like, huh? Nah, I'm safe. So, yeah, this was a really great episode. I want to thank Hailey for coming through. Shout out to Bianca, as always, for executive producing. The website is up. That's also going to be on the bio. The email is always up and running. If you do listen or watch the show, make sure you screenshot it and tag us on Instagram. We'll start reposting that. What else? If you listen on Apple Podcasts, make sure you rate and review. We need those. Those go up on the website as well. We are also on Spotify now, so you have no excuse.
Joe, we're coming for you.
we really gonna pull up on you if you don't fucking listen. And we are close to our 100th episode. Have we finally agreed on what we're gonna do?
We got something whipping up.
Vixon said we got something whipping up, so we got something.
Whipping up.
Yeah, and that's that. So we out.
Stay tuned. All right.
Later.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
We are out here. Fuck y'all talking about. Sophisticated ignorance. Are y'all fucking crazy?
That's a fact. Talk
Are y'all
that shit.
crazy? Yo, y'all getting me tight. Like, I be out here trying to be humble. Let's not get fucking crazy. Sophisticated ignorance. All right?